Right, so recently I finished a game called Neon Maze. It's a very simple maze game in which you need to find the exit, and that's it. There is nothing more to it. It's an extremely short game with just one level that takes about 5 minutes to complete. Not exactly the game I was hoping to make, but I'm still glad I did, because there were multiple times during the creation process where I just wanted to give up, but I'm really glad I didn't. Even though at some point I had no motivation left for this game, I just had to finish it, because if I didn't, there would be another game added to my failed games list, and I just didn't want that. So let's go back to the beginning of this project. It all started right after I had uploaded my latest giving up video, in which I said I needed to work on simpler, smaller projects, and one of the first things that came to mind was a maze game, because it didn't sound very complicated and I thought I could easily do it. So I started working. I made a simple movement script which moves the player by exactly one block each time they press one of the WASD keys. I did this to keep things easy. If the player can only move a restricted amount, I don't have to worry about complicated collisions. I do, however, need to create my own collision system, because the transform component doesn't really care if where he's trying to move is a wall or not. So as a solution, I added 4 colliders to the top, bottom, right and left of the player, which would detect if there is a wall there. With that system in place, I made a very simple maze to test if everything was working, and indeed it was. At this point, ideas started coming up, because I had just finished the main gameplay, and I thought, well, nothing can go wrong. I can always fall back on the gameplay, so I'm good to go as crazy as I want. This ended up being a mistake, and I was terribly wrong, because what I ended up going with from all the crazy ideas was a sort of dungeon game with loot, shops, enemies and much more. This was of course way too much and not a simple game anymore, but I didn't seem to realise this and started working on some assets for the game. But they didn't turn out quite the way I imagined it. It was just too grey and dark. It just didn't look good. So then I tried a pretty ridiculous green look, thinking it wouldn't look good at all. But it wasn't as bad as I thought. I kinda liked it. It gave me sort of nostalgia for a game I have never played. So for a bit I stuck with this green aesthetic, and I was quite pleased with how everything was going. But then came the turning point, the moment everything went wrong. I joined a game jam, which was great. I had a lovely time, but it did mean I stopped working on the game for about a week, and a lot can change in a week. When I came back to the project expecting to just be able to continue, I didn't like the game anymore. The controls felt off, the idea I had was clearly too big, and it just wasn't fun to play. At that moment I was terrified. Was this going to be another failed project? Was I not able to finish even the smallest of games because I made them too big? My motivation for this game had just dropped to zero. Before all this, working on the game was like carrying a flower up a hill, and now it had become a boulder, so heavy that I could barely move it. And at that moment I could have given up. I could have let the boulder roll down the hill back to the ground, but I didn't. I decided I was going to finish this game. No matter how hard it was, I just had to do it. So I made the hill as small as I could. Just one level. No complicated lore, mechanics, setting, art, nothing. I added some cool looking graphics that aren't the greatest ever, but what came before was much worse. I also added a door mechanic to the game, just because I thought it was cool. It's just a red square that turns green when you pick up a key, which is just a gold square. But I honestly really liked it. I made it so that when you pick up a key, all doors open, and once you go through one, they all close again until you pick up another key. This was pretty simple to make, but I'm really glad with how it turned out. Then I made a simple power up that increases your vision so you can see the entire room instead of just a small circle around you. And this was really easy to do, but it added a lot more depth and strategy to the game. Right, so I now had every component of our game finished. The only thing left to do was make one awesome level. So let's get to it. What you are seeing right now is hours of work. This took such a long time. Designing the maze wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be, but it still took a very long time. The big thing, however, was adding the correct textures to the maze. This was such a tedious process, it literally took me hours. There were so many different tiles that all needed to fit together perfectly, and after I was done, my hands were just pain. But it was done, and it had all been worth it. I had finished the game. Yes, it only takes about 5 minutes to play, but I don't care. It's done, and I can finally leave it behind and focus on other things without having that awful feeling of not finishing a game. You can play it if you want, there's a link in the description, but just don't expect too much. It's not a good game, it's not even a decent game, and the movement is really bad. But if you want to play it, go ahead. Right, so now I can finally start working on projects that hopefully don't get out of hand. So I'll see you in the videos about those, and with that said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.